these fights are kind of fire. What's up, guys? Lego Pencil here, and here we are to chat about Dragon Ball's fights. Man, Dragon Ball just has good fight writing, like all around in general. In fact, it's rather, I'm trying to think of bad, like full-on, outright bad Dragon Ball fights that aren't like jokes or memes. I guess you could argue, see, bad for characters and bad for fight. That's the thing. Toriyama and even Toyotaro, the system that they built for the fights to operate in was such a solid system that really anything can happen in it and it still looks cool. Because here's the thing. Early on, as early as Dragon Ball, once we actually started getting into fighting in Dragon Ball, the fights were still fire because it was much more martial arts based, so it was limited. But the way the characters were drawn, the way the characters moved due to their variances in size, that led to more interesting combat scenarios. Goku versus Krillin, you saw the difference between two equal-sized fighters in Goku and Krillin versus the difference between a taller fighter and a shorter fighter like Goku and Tien. You saw multiple different techniques, from the solar flare to the Kamehameha to basically everything Master Roshi did in the original Dragon Ball. There are so many different techniques, even as early as back then, that made fights very, very interesting to watch. And while a lot of techniques would be revealed on the fly, they would typically be introduced. And my favorite thing about techniques in Dragon Ball specifically is when they get reused, when the attacks are used again, when they're stolen by other people. The solar flare was Tien's move, but now I can't think of a single Dragon Team member that doesn't know the solar flare, because it's just a useful ability. The Kamehameha, it was Master Roshi's move, but everyone in their mama has the Kamehameha now. And the great thing that Dragon Ball does by having the key system specifically is that it lets moves be freely used. Because if you have the capability to use ki and you have enough power, you can likely copy a technique. You can take the fundamentals of a technique and use it somewhere else. Realize the Final Flash and the Big Bang Attack are just evolved versions of the Gallic Gun. And it's great to see in these fights where characters will learn something about their opponent and then start to use it against them. One of my favorite fights in the entire series is Goku versus Vegeta. Obviously, it's one of the best written shonen fights basically ever made. But the reason that fight is so good is because you can distinctly see the difference in their fighting styles. Even though Goku is forcing himself to use Kaioken to boost his power to match Vegeta, Goku is a martial artist. He is a warrior. He is trained in combat. So despite Vegeta having a consistent power advantage, Goku just keeps landing blows, sucker punching, getting in those hits that Vegeta just can't get in. Vegeta is swinging. Vegeta is a brute. Vegeta doesn't really fight with skill. And seeing that so well displayed in a fight, it's hard to do. It's hard to do when you're writing fights. And you can see it in a lot of other shonen where skill isn't really ever a factor. And while I do believe early Dragon Ball was better at this, like, it wasn't outright implied, it wasn't constantly said that, oh, I'm a skilled warrior while you're just a savage brute. But you can see it everywhere. Look at Goku and Vegeta. Vegeta hadn't trained at all really in true combat. He was just really, really strong, so he was swinging. And then you have Goku versus Frieza. Frieza wasn't a martial artist. He was just a really strong dude that would go out swinging. And then you finally got an evolution of that. You got more back to the original Dragon Ball sense, where fighters were around the same size and both were equally skilled. In the sense of Cell. Cell was an extremely interesting person to fight because he had the availability to every single technique. He pushed the envelope of having Dragon Ball characters share attacks to the limit because he had every single attack. Cell really created nothing of his own except for his explosion. Even that was copied from someone else. So when you look at all that, you're able to see how these fights, due to the great work of the shared power system in Ki, and due to the great work of the author not being afraid, it's going to sound bad when I say reuse, but the reason I'm fine with Krillin's Destructo Disc getting snatched up and used by every other person in existence is because it's used in different ways. Krillin uses it differently than Goku would use it, who uses it differently than Frieza would use it, who uses it differently than Vegeta would use it. All these characters, and at the same time, the best thing about that is that they all have the same utility. The Destructo Disc doesn't change. It may change a little bit, but no matter what, it's used for the same purpose. But when it's used, how it's used is what makes it interesting. The Kamehameha is so versatile. You can fire it from your hands, you can fire it from your feet, you can fuse it with other attacks, you can use it to redirect yourself. You can do so many things with the Kamehameha, and it's just a wave of ki. The great thing about Dragon Ball's fights is that they are so reader intensive. Like, when you're watching or reading a Dragon Ball fight, you're constantly wondering, how can this go? How do these fights flow? How do these fights move? That's another great thing Dragon Ball fights have. Dragon Ball has a really good sense of combat flow. And I'm saying that as a person who has no idea how to make combat flow nicely. I have no idea how to do it, but I can say Dragon Ball has really good. And the reason I say that is, look at Dragon Ball's paneling. Paneling is very, very important when you're creating a manga because it allows a flow. Typically when you watch, when you're reading Dragon Ball, you can see one hit will lead into another hit, will lead into another hit, which will lead into the next page. It's a constant flowing motion. That's why typically when you're reading Dragon Ball, it goes by so fast, because the pacing of it is so well and it's so clean done that the fights already feel animated. And then once you get to the actual Dragon Ball anime, the reason fights flow so well is because Toriyama and the creative team at Toei, to a degree, really understand how to make a fight flow in animation, which is way more difficult. With panels, you can literally guide the person's eye. However, when you're talking about in animation, the factors increase tenfold, if not more, because now you have to take in certain camera angles. You need to take in how the characters are going to be moving. You're going to have to take in so many extra factors, and Dragon Ball still makes it work. One of my favorite fights, Goku vs. Vegeta Round 2. The reason that fight is so interesting to see is because not only is it an evolution and rematch of one of the best fights ever in Goku vs. Vegeta Part 1, but it also shows such a weighty character flow. Every punch has impact. Every single hit feels massive, and it's because of how the fights are drawn and animated. It's so good. It's great. I really have nothing but praise for Dragon Ball's fights. And there are some fights that are badly animated. Yeah. However, I say this as a person who's read the Dragon Ball manga a couple times. I can't really think of a bad fight in the manga. And that may be crazy for me to say, but honestly, the reason there's no bad fights in the manga is because there's no filler. It's just action, 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 action. And Dragon Ball has this really good, healthy pace with its fights, where not only are the fights paced well, but the breaks between them are. Like, while we do get here's the thing. We do get Nappa versus the Dragon Team versus Vegeta versus the Dragon Team. We get those back to back. But the healthy pace break in between those fights is what makes things better. It's the ability of Dragon Ball to establish the tension of a fight, whether it be by jobbing other characters or by having the main character struggle, such as the case with Goku versus Frieza, and slowly ramping up. Typically, every time you're watching a Dragon Ball fight, there's a crescendo. It starts off low, and it'll build to a peak, and then if the fight has a second part, such as a transformation or an evolution or something, the tension is going to drop after that peak, and it's going to rise again. It's a constant, great, flowing wave with Dragon Ball, which makes sense, because it's one of the originals, and think about it, a lot of shonen fights are based off Dragon Ball. Look at Naruto, look at Bleach, look at a lot of popular shonen, and they're heavily influenced by Dragon Ball. And it's not because just Dragon Ball is an oldie, it's because it did it well. That's because it's good. That's why it's still going on. There are a ton of oldies that people love, but nothing is held like Dragon Ball is held. Nothing is influenced like Dragon Ball has, because Dragon Ball did it so well, and it did it first. And the only real criticism I have is the lack of character variety that's popped up recently. I believe that other characters should be given more focus and be allowed to do more things, and it shouldn't all just fall down to Goku. But even still, when the characters are allowed to do things, it gets interesting. It's what Dragon Ball fights are solid. They're super solid and they're great. That's the thing. Like I said, I just can't think of a complaint, really. I can't think of a complaint, because usually when Toriyama does something crazy, whether it be a new technique or something crazy or a new type of fight or something we weren't expecting, it usually turns out good. Are there some things I don't like about Toriyama? Yes, but usually, his fight writing, I can't fight his fight writing. Like, it's too good. It's too good. I feel bad because this video really just broke down to praise, and I don't know. Y'all have criticisms? Like, think of one Dragon Ball fight that's really, like, actually awful. And if it's something from GT, I can understand that. If it's something from the filler Super, I can understand that. But for the most part, I honestly can't think. Think about it. Kid Buu, Frieza, Vegeta, all these wonderful characters had these different fighting styles. And while the characters may have fallen short in some areas, the combat never did for me. But that's it for me. Please, just tell me what you guys think in the comment section down below. I'm really like, man, I wish I had thought about this more beforehand, because then I would have been able to think of like a more weighty criticism. But no, I didn't. That's my fault. But regardless, thank you guys so much for watching. Please remember to like, share, comment, and subscribe. And I hope you guys have a wonderful day. This is That Guy with a Pencil, writing off.